My first 100K was Bandera and twisted my ankle 40 miles in. Was having a great race and could have gone desperately downward from there. And I wasn't in a good spot in life. I wasn't happy at all. I was very unhappy. And that was when I met Amanda. I don't think it was coincidental. I think I needed to meet Amanda, whether some higher being helped with that or it's coincidence. I don't think things happen by chance because I've seen too much, I guess.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspects of running and what helps people to achieve success, however they define it, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Thank you to Hydro for sponsoring this episode. Hydro is an immersive workout experience designed to bring the physical, mental, and emotional experience of on-water rowing straight to your home. Hydro workouts are quick, efficient, and low impact. Rowing for just 20 minutes a day provides you with a full body workout, which engages 86% of your major muscle groups. For context, cycling engages 44%. Head to hydro.com to check them out. That's hydrow.com to learn more. Be sure to use the code FTLR100 to save $100 on your order. This episode is brought to you by Freedom Solar Power. When I first started looking into solar, I thought it would be a clunky and expensive process. I've learned it isn't nearly as hard as you think. Freedom Solar Power makes it simple. They provide a turnkey solution that is focused on educating their customers on the experience from installation to everyday use and savings. They ensure you have all the information needed to make sure going solar is right for you. From firsthand experience, it makes sense both financially and for the environment. With no down payment required, solar not only adds immediate value to your home, but it's also great for the environment and might even provide immediate savings, not to mention the year-end tax benefits, a credit of 26% this year. Freedom Solar operates in Texas, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida, and there are plenty of other great options nationwide. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode. Tracksmith is an independent running brand inspired by a deep love of the sport. Their spring collection is now available and features staples thoughtfully designed for this season of training. From their versatile session tops cut from a soft stretch knit to Lane 5 and Reggie short tights perfect for racing a marathon, these pieces are built to work as hard as you do. Tracksmith is a brand for committed runners like you and me, people who know that the best part of a busy day is squeezing in a workout. They offer products for training, racing, and rest days, which you know I'm a fan of, and create experiences that make running more rewarding, more connected, and more meaningful. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders with the code FORTHELONGRUN will receive free shipping, and 5% of the purchase amount will be donated to the Michael J. Fox Foundation to help find a cure and support those living with Parkinson's. Welcome back. I have Justin Grunewald joining me in person here in Boulder. Justin, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Totally. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So the first question of this podcast is always a tough one. Who is Justin?
Oh, that is tough. I guess I am a physician for my day job, a trail runner for my enjoyment, and then partner to Amanda Basham. My first wife, Gabriele, had passed away, and Amanda Basham and I have a lovely daughter named Rylan and a second daughter on the way, hopefully in about a month.
That is very exciting. This is a conversation I've wanted to have with you for quite a while. We chatted online for a lot about how you handled your 2019. And your experience with processing grief was instrumental in my ability to process grief in different but similar ways, which I want to dive into. We'll definitely get there, but let's start on the running side of things, as this is a running podcast that dabbles in talking about running. So we'll start there. Talking about your first run, do you remember the day you did that?
I mean, I think growing up, I grew up as a baseball, basketball, and football player, so running was punishment. So I remember running in that regard. But I think in the 5th grade mile or something, I remember running fast for a 5th grader and thinking it was cool to be able to just beat people, essentially.
So it was early on you realized you were pretty good at it.
Yeah, but I didn't really do much with it. I guess in 7th grade, I went out for track because we only had summer league baseball. And I high jump, long jump, and triple jumped and maybe ran like the 100. So I ran as little as possible. It was just cross training. But I think in 9th grade, I got thrown in a mile race and ran well. And then I got thrown in a 2-mile race and made it to the state meet. And then that's when it kind of stuck.
So 2 miles, you're doing long distance at this point. What was it like to be towards the front of the pack in those races?
I'm from a pretty small town, so small region, small section, but I wasn't necessarily towards the front of the pack. My 9th grade year, you had to qualify for our section or regional meet, and 16 people did, and I was the 16th out of 16 qualifiers. So I told my coach I was just going to run with 2nd place because top 2 go to state and hang on as long as I could, and end up kicking him down and getting 2nd place. And everyone thought it was hilarious or crazy, but so it took like one race just to get a ton of confidence. And then I tried to do the same thing at the state meet and got lapped multiple times, I think.
So you're getting lapped. You're 16th of 16 back then. And these days you're signing up for 100K races and 50 milers and 50Ks. And you're out. For anyone who follows you on Strava, it's just like a mind-blowing experience to follow along with. I see you putting up these marathons that are like 3 hours and change with like 4,000 feet of climbing at 9,000 feet or something like that. So what did the in-between from that 2-mile race to marathons and beyond look like for you?
Really, it was a pretty successful high school career that was basically just grew as I went, got a better spot at state. I think 10th grade, 11th grade, senior year, got a scholarship to go to University of Minnesota. Really fell out of love with running during college a bit. School's hard, running's hard, add in like unhealthy lifestyles and just people you live with that it's just too much running probably, but then fell in love with running during medical school and essentially had Gabriele to train with during medical school. So I was focusing on her short stuff, knowing all along I wanted to do longer stuff.
So talk to me about getting back into it during med school. How did you find that joy again?
I found it through a coach, actually. Gabriele's high school coach, his name is Jeff Morris. And Perham High School is this absolute powerhouse of a high school team, which had never had like a state champion before her. And since her has probably had 50, which is crazy to think they've had that many. And I just pitched to him if he wanted to coach me for a marathon or something. And he loved the idea. So he actually started coaching a handful of people. And he just held me accountable. I was really a machine, I'd say, in med school. He was high mileage, high everything. So I'd get up at like 6 a.m. before class and hammer out 10 by mile on a treadmill at like sub 5 pace and then fly somewhere for a race. But it's just study, eat, sleep, run. That's all I did in med school. And it was nice because that's sometimes all there's time for.
How did you balance it, right? So many people find a challenge in doing just the med school portion or just the high mileage running. How were you able to do both?
I think failing miserably to balance it in undergrad taught me how to balance it in grad school or medical school.
What do you mean by failing miserably?
In college, I trained hard, didn't eat well, got anemic. And I remember my sophomore year, I decided I wanted to be the best in the country. Like just ran 120 miles a week in the summer at sub 6 minute pace probably. Came into the first meet and got 2nd place narrowly to the guy who won the NCAA championship that year. And then found myself anemic and on the sidelines and actually had I used to have like recurring nightmares where you sleep through a test or you show up for a test. And that actually happened to me. I woke up at like 8 a.m., went to my animal physiology class and there was a test that day and I hadn't opened the book and I I think I got like 5 out of 100, which is unrecoverable. And like from that, I think I ended up getting a C in the class, which was my worst grade ever. But I don't think I got below like an A in a class after that, and really just changed my competitive focus. I still ran on the team and was competitive, but was really more competitive in the classroom and just thought it'd be cool to set the curve and be a big nerd.
Which you did. You're a physician now. And how are you balancing the full-time or the work as a physician with the high mileage and having almost 2 kids?
Yeah,
and dogs.
Yeah, Amanda and I have a crazy life. But my job as a physician, I'm what's called a hospitalist, is actually super convenient for being both a stay-at-home parent and a trail runner or runner of any kind. So I work a really hard week. Every third week is what it was when I was full-time, but I cut back to 3/4 time. So it ends up being a hard week every month where I work right around 90 hours that week, which just ends up being my down week for running and my down week for parenting. And Amanda picks up the slack for me. But then I'm off the next 3.5 weeks or whatever. So then I'm home full-time, can run. She can go for her run. I can go for my run. One of us hangs out with Rylan, and it's pretty ideal.
So my girlfriend's a nurse. She spends 12 hours a day on her feet. And one of the challenges she's had is like, how do you run? Like, do you run on days that you work, or do you just chalk up the time on feet to be a part of training?
I definitely run. So my job is even weirder because I work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I basically am a zombie my work week. I go to work at 6, get off at 6, immediately go to bed, sleep until noon, hopefully, drink 3 cups of coffee, go for my run, and repeat. The biggest or the hardest thing is like when you're at the hospital for those 12 hours, I'm really bad at packing a lunch because it's like an overnight shift. So I just end up eating 5 bags of like fun-sized Doritos, and then you just feel miserable. And it just is a vicious cycle of misery.
So that's challenging, but probably helpful for longer ultras, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I've tried to run right after work, and it's horrible. It's a slog. So I need to put in sleep. Even when I was in residency or med school doing crazy long hours, I'd just take like an hour nap. And that's why I became a night runner, because Gabriele loved running at night. But if I could get an hour nap in, I could just be fresh and go hammer out anything.
So let's talk more about your relationship with Gabriele. How did you guys meet?
We met in college, just maybe like the first, second day. I distinctly remember meeting her just because, I mean, if you believe in, I was actually thinking about this because I figured you may ask me that question. I only distinctly remember meeting 2 people in my life, and they're Gabriele and Amanda, which is really weird. But literally, yeah, but like the first time I saw, I could tell you exactly what she was wearing: a gray t-shirt, general issue shorts, and like just, I can still see that picture in my head. And met Amanda shortly before the Bandera 100K. And just, yeah, it's just interesting. But we just met. We were both freshmen on the team at University of Minnesota.
And you said that your trajectory with her as a runner, you were supporting a lot of her workouts and racing. Talk to me about that process. Like, it was about her, right? A lot of your life as a support system for her became very public several years ago, and it was incredible to see. But I'm curious your experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, in college,
on the running side,
yeah,
to start, yeah.
In college, she seemed like she had a ton of talent, but Gary Wilson was her coach. He's a phenomenal coach, but I don't know, he didn't always coach her exactly where she needed to be. Like, he pushed her into the 800 meters where I'd push her up towards the 15, 5K, just probably because I'm longer distance oriented. But I just thought she was super talented. And then we called it like gender doping. Like, she could train with me, and not to say there's plenty of women that can run way faster than me, but at the time where we were, I could run like a low 4-minute mile, and that's like the women's, I think world record-ish. So like she could train with like the woman's world record holder in all of her events. And that kind of just pushes you. And she was someone who was just smart. She'd kick ass in a workout and take easy days easy and just always listen to her body. She was the queen of cutting it 2 intervals short just because she knew exactly what she needed. And we just were training partners, life partners, best friends, whatever. And there was so much more to her story that it felt very fulfilling for me to just be there to support her running wise.
And so we fast forward a few years, cancer diagnosis, rare form of cancer, and you decide you're living life 3 months at a time. So I had a conversation yesterday with a friend on the run. We were talking about the last couple of years, the pandemic and the war with that's happening in Ukraine right now. And he was like, we were running next to South Boulder Road and it was snowing. And we were talking about how everything is so unpredictable. And I was like, look, a car could drive off the road right now and kill us both. And that's the end. So we have to be doing things that are bringing joy. It doesn't have to be fun, but joy. Like we were running in the snow. It was cold. It was wet. It wasn't comfortable, but it was joyful. And that conversation reminded me of how you approached life in those years. So I'm curious where that came from and how you were able to get to a point where it was just what was in front of you and you were truly in the moment. And maybe another question, were you truly in the moment?
I think the unpredictability of her cancer allowed us or made us live that way, essentially. And to live 3 months, which the increments got shorter and shorter, it was kind of just our setup for when the next scan was. And if you had a scan earlier, say right when she was diagnosed, it was like yearly scans and everything was smooth. And then she was just excelling at running, excelling at life. And then you get a scan and there's a big thing in your liver. And then it sets you back to like living days at a time. Like, can it get removed? Like, we're going to stay up all night and walk the whole city of Minneapolis and go to our favorite dinner place and just live a day. Like, you can really stretch out 24 hours. It's pretty incredible. But the increments just changed with time. And when she felt good, we packed in as much as we could. And I think we were, to say the presentness, it would wax and wane because going through rotations in med school and going through residency, you just get your butt kicked. But we'd always have, it'd be frustrating because we'd go out to like a nice dinner and I'd be falling asleep at the table, because I hadn't slept in 36 hours. But we still did it. And probably I have like horrible sleep habits, everything, and probably always will, just because I think we always tried to maximize time. And she'd sleep like 14 hours a night, which was amazing, like a great pro athlete should. But the one, I was getting home from night shift and gave her a side hug and her side felt generous. And it's just like immediately with her history, that's when we figured out she had a large liver met. We drove to the hospital and got a scan, but had, like you say, were you always cognizant, like living in that moment? You never expect, or you don't, if you have a cancer diagnosis or something, you're always going to be paranoid and you're going to become a bit of a hypochondriac. But like she had things that were weird, like her like physio was like, oh, your rib cage is generous, you're less mobile on this side. And like putting 2 and 2 together, I kick myself for not like catching things sooner, but would it have made a difference? I don't know,
And how did running play into it for both of you in those days?
I mean, running was great. It was our dates. Like our Friday night dates would be going to an outdoor or indoor track and doing repeats until the lactic acid built up so high, cooling down, and then literally going to our favorite restaurant, sweaty. And our problem was places don't serve food late enough because we like run late. In the summer, you can get light until 10 p.m. So we had our like 3 favorite places.
On the right side of the time zone.
Yeah, exactly.
So running is a large part of it. And then we're fast forwarding a couple of years and you're sharing the grieving process. Why? Why were you so public?
I don't think it was exactly intentional. So we had discussions about her sharing her process. And through it, I wasn't always super comfortable because you get a lot of weird reactions. And ultimately, if you have a shitty cancer that's not cured and you're this beautiful 20-something-year-old, you get a lot of sympathy and just a lot of attention, which I think you deserve if you want it. But her big thing was, no one knows what adenoid cystic carcinoma is, so I'm going to give it a name so other people in the future don't have to Google it and find one page that says nothing about it other than you're screwed. So she took that on herself, and I wasn't always comfortable, but knowing how she shared every part of her process, from having half her liver removed to us being on a clinical trial. I say us, but her, but us. I mean, going to New York every other week for 6 months. And if you've ever been in worse waiting rooms, no offense, Sloan Kettering, a great cancer research treatment center, but when your appointment's at noon and you have to do an hour infusion and it gets pushed back till 6 p.m. and you've been sitting in this waiting room with fluorescent lights for 6 hours and you already don't feel well because you're getting treatment. It was just something we endured, and she shared it all, from just being tired, feeling good, falling in love with New York. It just, everything she shared made me feel not necessarily obligated, but made me feel like...
Carry the torch.
Yeah.
Your ability to do that was, I can't put words to it. Several months later, I watched my grandfather die, and I intentionally shared that process. I shared how I stood in the bathroom of his house, knowing that this was the last time I was ever going to talk to him. And I thought of you in that moment. I thought of you and what you had gone through. And I was public with it. And I got so many messages from people saying, I've had a similar experience. I've had this, I've had that. So your ability to do that allowed me to do it, allowed somebody else to do it. And it's so crazy how such a hyper personal experience can, if shared, help. And I went into that conversation with him, and the last thing he ever said to me was, the whole reason we're here is to leave the world a better place than when we entered it. And it's like the epitome of everything you're saying. And that process was, I mean, this was my grandfather. I can't imagine your spouse and whatnot. But the more that I had shared it, the more people reached out with like their own stories. And right, that's what we're all here for, to connect, to feel seen, to feel heard. So I just want to thank you for how you lived your life and how you continue to live your life, because it had a tremendous impact on myself. I talked about this. I had Ladia on the podcast in 2020 in March. Probably one of my favorite conversations I've had. It was episode, I'd say 59, 60, 61, something like that. If you're listening, go back and check it out. She's an absolute gem of a human. And we talked a lot about this exact topic. Curious your relationship with her over the years.
Yeah, I mean, she'll probably always be my best friend. She's that person, if I need someone to text or someone to talk things through with, she's always there. And I think she always will be. I think we just always send each other our Spotify song that catches our ear this week or that week, and it's nice. But I think there was also, it's not easy, it's not normal. There's no normal transition. There's no normal pace of finding someone to be in love with when you've lost the person you are in love with. And I think Ladia, as best she could, supported me in meeting Amanda and falling in love with Amanda. And that really means a ton, because not everyone is overly warm and welcome about that. And there's no timeline to anything. In reality, when Gabriele passed away, my ideal life was just disappearing, and like, but you can't do that. It's incredibly selfish, you know?
Amanda's incredible in her own way. I met her, I don't know, 2016, 2017. And I forget what year that was the first year she came in fourth at Western States. But we all slept at the Goo House in Auburn after that race. And she was on the floor in one corner of the room, and I was on the floor in the other. And there were 4 other people on the floor elsewhere. And I wake up the next day, I'm like, I had run like 12 miles and went to like 5 or 6 aid stations. And I wake up and I'm like, wow, I'm really sore. She's like, shut the fuck up. She came in fourth.
Yeah.
Ran 100 miles.
Yeah, she's crazy.
So you go from running a mile, 2 miles, chasing the marathon, and now you're beyond. I'm curious your relationship with trail running and how that has evolved over the years, and Amanda's influence on trail running for you.
I don't even know what my relationship is with trail running. I love to run trails, and being in Colorado, having trails everywhere you can find them is incredible. In Minnesota, it's not nearly as robust, but we do have our Afton Alps trails and places like that. But I just really love being out in the mountains for a day at a time, whether it's alone or with people. Sadly, or not sadly, wonderfully, Amanda and I have not known each other that long and have our second kid on the way. But I look forward to big, long mountain days with her where you just kind of pack a lunch and go and see all the beauty there is to offer. So the racing I have to figure out, and I think...
But do you have to figure it out?
I do. It's just, I think I'm pretty inconsistent. I'm probably in great shape right now. I'm usually in really good shape. But for Black Canyon in particular, just some fluky injury early in the race screwed that up. But going into it, I was listening. I'm not a podcast listener, but Amanda loves podcasts. So I listen here and there. Like if Ladia's on a podcast, I'll listen. If Amanda's on a podcast, I'll listen. But in general, I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, and because I just really like music. I'm just like musically obsessed. But if we're in a car ride, I'll listen. But I started listening to like analysis of the race. And granted, these guys like Dylan Bowman, Eric Sensman, all whoever, whatever, they're all giving their guys that are going to win no matter what. And none of those guys finished. So I just can't listen to that stuff. I respect those guys as runners, but you can draw a name out of a hat and say they're going to win. I don't care how many golden tickets you have. You still have to run 100 kilometers. And I just let that kind of get to me. And I was like, I'm done.
The
like
pre-race predictions?
Yeah, just dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd never... So I think you add in all those little scenarios and something went awry. You have to be... If you're going to run 8 hours, you have to be strong mentally. And having David in my corner or coaching me, guiding me, has been incredible. And my confidence level went from like mid-range to super high range because he's so amazing. And he just also knows a ton, which is nice because I can ask him a question like, why am I doing this? And he's like, gives me the nerdiest, smartest answer in the world. And I'm like, thank you. I'll do that exactly what you say.
I asked him a question like that yesterday and he gave me that exact answer.
It's just a very intelligent, science-based coach.
Totally. So talk to me more about the building the mental strength to be able to run hard for 8 hours. I find that I too struggle with racing. I don't need to race is what 2021 taught me. And so as we were talking about beforehand, like I pulled out of Way Too Cool 50 because I just didn't want to. But there's also a bit of like lack of confidence my confidence doesn't match my abilities. Last fall, I was probably in shape to run 250s in the marathon, and I ran 336 and had like an epic blow up. So I'm curious, like your relationship with working on mental strength, particularly as you go longer.
Yeah.
Or maybe not the relationship with it, but like the process with it.
I think it's just being patient. I've now run a handful of them, and it's so different than roads. I think if you don't come from a road background, it's a lot easier to be a trail runner. Because in the roads, if someone puts a mile on you in a marathon, in a half marathon, you're most likely never going to see them again. In 100K, someone could have 5 miles on you and you can beat them by 3 hours. And just having the confidence either to go out hard with people and hang on or go out slow and pick people off, it's all just mind games. And even, it's funny, I don't know what his name is, I can't remember it, but he's like a Canadian, super good Olympian, I think, in the marathon. He was at Black Canyon. And, people jockey with each other. So he comes sprinting by me at 20 miles and I'm just like, that's exactly what a road runner would do. And I read his blog afterwards and it's like, definitely made horrible mistakes around 20 miles. I'm like, you're not going to break me 20 miles. And he was like walking 2 miles later.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Thanks again to Hydro for supporting the podcast. I've been enjoying my Hydro to fit in bonus cardio that doesn't take much time at all, as even a 10 to 15 minute row feels like a solid workout. It's a fun experience to be able to row on familiar routes or explore new ones on the water. Head to hydro.com, that's HYDROW.com to learn more. Be sure to use the code FTLR100 to save $100 on your order. Thanks again to Freedom Solar Power for supporting this episode of the podcast and our environment by providing an easy, green energy source. The buying process was fascinating and eye-opening, and I'm excited to pay my learnings forward. If you're curious about going solar in your home, message me on Twitter or Instagram, and I'd be happy to help your journey by providing some great resources. Freedom Solar is a full-service solar company that's been installing solar panels and backup power systems since 2007. They operate in Texas, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida. Not in any of those states? Don't fret, my parents have the same panels from SunPower that were installed by a different company in Massachusetts. SunPower is the best in the business, and that's what Freedom Solar uses. I've enjoyed working with the whole team over at Freedom Solar, and I'm sure you will too. Thanks again to Tracksmith for supporting the podcast and their continued support of not just this podcast, but the running community in general. I'm proud to partner with Tracksmith, and they're going to donate 5% of your order to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for all orders, and you'll also get free shipping. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is dedicated to finding a cure and helping those living with Parkinson's. Both of my grandfathers have or had Parkinson's, and I'm grateful of Tracksmith's support for something so personal. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders with the code FORTHELONGRUN, one word, will contribute towards this donation. Their spring collection is now available and features staples thoughtfully designed for this season of training. So what are the goals? What are your running goals?
I mean, I really want to qualify for Western States. I'm running the speed project in a week from today, which will be fun with a cool ultra team. That's my immediate goal, is to win that with our team and have a fun time. But qualify for Western, it's probably not going to be this year because our baby's due date is right when Canyons is. And just the added stress of possibly having to fly out at I just don't want to add to the stress of it. I want it to be enjoyable. So we've talked about maybe going to New Zealand for a month before Tarawara and doing that 100K next year. Just our family, just kind of moving there for a month. And
Amanda's run that one before, right?
Yeah. But qualify for Western. There's a handful of FKTs that are very intriguing to me. I've never run 100 miles, so getting in like Leadville sounds super cool. And there's various races around the world that sound fun.
What is it about that 100-mile distance, and particularly that race, that intrigues you?
I don't know. It was just this weird obsession, I think, following the sport before I could be a part of it. I have to say I'm like a huge Jim Walmsley fanboy. He's just incredible. And he's unreal good. But he also, if you look at his background PRs, he started trail running way younger than myself, but very similar, pre-trail running accolades. But he's a machine, and he eats, breathes, and sleeps running, which it seems like he's maybe moving away from and balancing his life out a little bit, which might make him worse at trail running or make him better, to be determined.
Yeah, right. It's like the first podcast I ever released was with Ben Rosario, and his take was, if running is all you have, I feel bad for you. And because what happens when you don't have it, or what happens when you're injured, or what happens when blah, 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 blah. And it was an interesting conversation because for some, it works really well until it doesn't. And you generally don't hear about the until it doesn't part or what happens after that. And then for some, it's like I have so many conversations with pro athletes or elite athletes who have a full-time job or a half-time job or a three-quarter-time job or something. And they're like, I couldn't run at this level without a second thing to focus on or a third thing to focus on. I'm assuming you fall into that bucket, into that second bucket.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I've never tried to just be a pro runner, but Amanda having to deal with me on my weeks off already, where you can run 2 hours in a day, do a little core, and hang out with Rylan. But I think she'd lose her mind if I didn't work.
Yeah, I would lose my mind if I didn't work at it. So I would definitely imagine that would be true. One of the topics that I like to talk about on the podcast is success and defining success. So I'm curious what you would consider success or successful.
I think I've found success like 2 months ago, maybe, probably around the time when you saw me doing those long runs up high. And it wasn't that I was out of love with running for a period, but I just really loved it again. I loved being outside for 4 hours. You can't take that time for granted when you have other stuff on your plate. Like, I need to be a good parent. I need to be a good partner. I need to be a good hospitalist, whatever. So I was just like, this is my time and this is how I choose to spend it. And just seeing like the random moose or the mule deer or the herd of elk. And I'm just like, this is incredible.
So how did you get there?
I don't know. It was a few months into running for David, with David for David. He's not like whipping me or running from David.
He's just throwing like jokes out at you. And
I was of the mentality, I guess, from previous coaches, probably from like collegiate coaching, and where I never really took a day off. I could go 100 runs without a day off and like doubles mixed in. And he has you take Mondays off. And I think taking Monday off, every Monday off, has made me like running so much more. Not that I didn't already like it a lot, but I'll read about people that'll be like, which is cool for them. It's their thing. I've run like 8,000 straight days. And I'm like, nothing sounds worse to me than that. Like, that sounds up.
It's like, it's motivating for some people. Yeah. I have a friend who has run every day since the start of the pandemic, and it's called the Rona Run Streak. And like, that's what gets her going. Totally. And if that gets you going, great. That would get me injured and fall out of love with running. And like, I look forward to Mondays, A, because it's my busiest work day, but B, it's like, I can't handle running every day of the week. And I've had coaches, or I've had another coach where it would be like one day off every 28 days. I was like obsessive about it. I would like, yeah, we're going a month, one day off in a month. And I was like a new runner, and I saw a lot of progress, and then I got injured. And then I saw a lot of progress, and then I got injured. It's fascinating to see him do that for athletes at any level. I mean, he's had athletes that raced in the Olympic trials that are taking days off every single week or most weeks. But if you're listening and you're like, no, screw those guys, I like my run streak, more power to you. But I think the point is, if performance is the goal, it's really challenging to never take days off.
Yeah, and so I'll run hard 3 days a week, and the quality of my 3 hard runs has gone up astronomically since taking a day off. Whereas before, you're just slogging through.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes when you run less, you run better, or when you slow down, you run better. I tweeted a few weeks ago that I run with a friend who's training for a 2:37 marathon, and many of her runs are at 8:30 pace, and I've never had a more controversial tweet. I had people telling me I was an idiot, or she was an idiot, or I'm like, all right, try it. Talk to me about mental health and how you prioritize yourself, right? You seem like such a giver, and you seem like you care so much about those around you. I'm curious, how do you make sure, or do you make sure you're still filling up your own cup?
Yeah, I mean, Amanda and I actually have kind of had this conversation, but kind of like what your grandpa said, or I don't know if I have some weird disorder, but it generally fills my cup to fill someone else's cup. And I do things for myself. Like I love expensive beer, so I buy myself expensive beer, and that fills my cup. It makes me happy.
Literally.
Yeah. And running is a very selfish sport. I'm solely running for me. That's my filler or fills me up. But I went into medicine because it's a way you can help people. And when I started medicine, I was like, I used to like try to like predict life years I've prolonged, which granted, sometimes prolonging life isn't pretty and it's not always the best decision, but everyone has their choice to prolong their life or not prolong their life. And I've worked way too much and seen way too many patients that I quit keeping track of it a long time ago. But I just thought, what a cool way to give back to the world, just to like prolong the life of someone's spouse, partner, parent, grandparent. And it just makes me happy. And then Gabriele kind of gifted me some leadership in the foundation where we raise money for rare cancer research. That makes me happy too, just because I know how, I guess, isolated you are. And I don't think I can't say no one chooses to get cancer. I mean, no one is like, yes, give me cancer. But like, obviously, if you do certain things, you make yourself more susceptible. And I think that's the general consensus that gets thrown at cancer a lot. But there's a ton of just super young, healthy people that get dealt a crappy card, and they don't deserve that. I mean, no one deserves it, but they especially don't.
Yeah, and then it's what you do with it and the time that you have.
Yeah, and I mean, Amanda and Rylan fill my cup immensely. Like running around our house with Rylan on my shoulders laughing, nothing can fill my cup up more than that. And just Amanda and I got in one long run between pregnancies. I think we went like 28 miles, and it's just 98 degrees hot, dipping in a river. But those are just, like you said, you have to find things you enjoy and do things. And that's what I look forward to.
I'm sure there are a lot of healthcare workers that are listening to this that are nodding their heads in agreement. I find the type of person that it takes to do this kind of thing to be incredible. My girlfriend's an oncology nurse. She's worked in hospice before. And when I told my mom that was her career background, she's like, I don't need to know anymore. My mom watched her best friend die from cancer. And obviously my grandfather with Parkinson's, and it was like, these are the two people that like were closest to me in life besides my dad, and was cared for by a person like that. And so I've had so many conversations with her about it, and it's just mind blowing to me, the ability to, I don't know if it's like persist or just exist and compartmentalize like what's going on with the person you're taking care of, and like have conversations with them and hear about their life story. And I just find it like so incredible that humans have like the capacity to care this much. And then you look on the flip side and you see all this crazy shit that's going on in the world. And it's also mind blowing to see how much of a lack of compassion there can be at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, especially right now in the world, I think there was a large strain in the vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And that really made me just sad about where we are as people. I'm very pro-vaccine, so I would love it if everyone, granted I'm hoping maybe the pandemic's fizzing out, but we'd never treat a patient differently because they're not vaccinated. But I think there was a lot of fear of that. And maybe some people did treat them differently. And that's just weird,
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in a position like that. And yeah, not to get too political, but to get too political, it's like, I don't understand the cognitive dissonance of, nope, not gonna take a, well-researched vaccine. Oh, now I'm sick. I'm going to go to a hospital and ask for care.
It's just what happens when a pandemic occurs within 2 years of the election, which is basically every year possible. It's sad. Yeah. Yeah.
Back to running. One of the things I love about this podcast is like we can go anywhere, and there are probably people that are like, stick to running. And there are probably people that are like, this conversation is what I want to hear right now because it makes me feel normal. And I love that we can we can have this conversation. Okay, so back to running for real this time. Your legs are incredibly muddy. Talk to me about Boulder running. You go back and forth between Minneapolis and Boulder. What are your favorite trails out here in Boulder?
Ooh, I have a lot of favorites. My favorite area is probably over in Netherlands. There's a loop called the High Lonesome Loop.
I love this loop.
Yeah, it's the epitome of an ass kicker, but it's beautiful, and you see moose and everything every time you run it. Yeah. Out at our house, we're 2 miles from Walker Ranch, which is another. I think people like claim it's not that hard of a loop, but I've never run fast on that loop. And it always beats me up.
Go with Matt Daniels.
Yeah, he flies on it. He's like a wizard out there. But and then everything out of Chautauqua, that's where I ran today, the Mesa Trail, is just for Boulder. It's flat, 2,000 feet a gain, I think, over like 13 miles. And it's pretty runnable. But we just have this dirt road that goes along Gross Reservoir that I think the smallest grade you can get out our door is like 250 feet a mile. So
I spent last winter in Breckenridge, and I was told very early on that it's considered flat if it's 100 feet per mile.
Yeah.
So 250 feet per mile is serious. Switching back to not running for a second, I'm curious, what are you afraid of?
Spiders.
See, I love when people answer with like something like that. Sometimes people are like death or like something like super serious or whatever. But spiders, it's a rational fear. Heights. I'm afraid of heights.
So I was afraid of heights as a kid, and then I just basically forced myself upon them, and now they don't bother me. But I'm not really afraid of spiders. Rattlesnakes like popping out on the trail at me. Actually, no, I'm afraid of mountain lions. I saw one mountain lion and nearly crapped my pants.
Today?
No, just I've seen one. It was weird. The day we brought Rylan back from the hospital, I went on a run, and I think it was like 8 p.m. in January, and I had a headlamp. Saw 4 moose, a herd of elk, a whole bunch of deer, and then I was a half mile from our house, and I see a giant cat sitting on a rock staring at me.
Remind me not to run with you.
Yeah. But it's like, it was all in one. I hadn't seen a moose in 3 months. I see elk randomly all the time, but it's like you brought your kid home. Here's Mother Nature.
Here's the arc.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing I don't like or I'm not comfortable with Colorado. It's just like I grew up in the suburbs of Massachusetts and like had no exposure to crazy wildlife besides birds and deer and stuff. Last winter, I went for a run with a friend out in Fairplay, and we were in the parking lot. It was in March. We were in the parking lot, and this Escalade with Florida plates drives up. And they're like, "You guys see any wildlife out here?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, I live down the road. I see a cougar in my front yard every day." And they were like, "Whoop, we're going elsewhere." And so we start running, and I'm like, "Do you like carry anything for that kind of stuff?" Thinking that like he would say like mace or something. He's like, "Yeah, 9mm." I was like, "Whoa, that's something." And then we run past a kill site, and there's just fresh blood everywhere on the trail. He's like, "You see that?" I was like, "I'm trying not to." "You have that 9mm on you?" He's like, "No, I only carry it at night." I was like, "Dude, what the hell?" But it's, yeah, I guess that's the give and the take with the fun big mountains.
Yeah, and not to be, I don't know, dramatic, but if I was out running and a mountain lion decided it was my time to go, like at least I'm doing something I love. Granted, I think I had a different approach to death pre-kid than post-kid. Like, I want to see my kid grow up, obviously. Before I was like, meh, whatever.
So he died doing what he loved. You still died and still like...
I got in like a bad argument about this shortly after Gabriele passed. I was on some thing with Jaybird, the headphone company.
Yep.
And somebody passed away doing what they love. And I was like, what a beautiful way to go. And like a woman lost her mind on me. And I was like, she didn't know, I think, where I was coming from. And she writes for like Outside. And I'm like, it's horribly sad. And it's sad for everyone around them. But to get to die doing what you love. And
You've been around a lot of it.
Yeah. And I don't go to church regularly, but I believe in a higher being. I grew up Christian. I grew up Catholic. And the Catholics have done themselves no favors. Not that we need to get into other random topics, but it's hard to really associate.
We're either going to get a lot of thumbs up or a lot of thumbs down in this one.
But I believe I get signals from Gabriele all the time, I think, or maybe I'm just this crazy person that thinks they're signals. But when I need her, she's there. So that makes me
so?
Just super random stuff from needing. I was at a very low point a couple of years ago, and I ran out to the cemetery where she's buried. It's 5 miles there, 5 miles back. I went out there late at night, and I was like, just need a sign, like, give me something. And all of a sudden, this like fireball, like, I'm not kidding, it was like the biggest meteor I've ever seen in my life, just starts flying right at me, like immediately after I said it. I was like, thumbs up, I'm gonna jog home. Like, thank you.
What did that feel like?
Very fulfilling. It's just, even, I think my first 100K was Bandera, and twisted my ankle 40 miles in, was having a great race, and could have gone desperately downward from there. And I wasn't in a good spot in life. I wasn't happy at all. I was very unhappy. And that was when I met Amanda. I don't think it was coincidental. Like, I think I needed to meet Amanda, whether some higher being helped with that or it's coincidence. Like, I don't think things happen by chance, because I've seen too much, I guess. But
put that on a shirt.
Yeah, just stuff like that.
We talked a lot about legacy. What do you want your legacy to be?
I honestly don't really care. I think if I do my part for humanity, at the end of the day, I'm happy. But it's funny. I think life is so weird. I don't know if other people. I'm not bipolar or split personality, but I feel like I live all these different lives where I'm a complete different person. Like, if you went into like the emergency room at Abbott Northwestern Hospital where I work and spend all my night shift, I'm just like goofing around with the EMTs all night. Granted, I'm having this very serious job dealing with very sick people, but we find levity and like goofing around. And I just hope people, I guess my legacy is, don't take life too seriously. Like, you're not going to make it out regardless. So make other people's lives enjoyable and a little lighter along the way.
There's so I'm Jewish, and there's a line that we say over the high holidays between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it's basically what am I trying to say? The point of it is basically, we came from dust, we turn into dust. It's what happens. And it's like people say, oh, it's not the year you were born or the year you died. It's like that dash is what matters most. And I completely agree. This conversation I was having with my friend yesterday was like, what if that car hit a snow patch, flung off the road, and that was it? Like, would I be proud of what I've done yesterday, or did I enjoy today? Not to be too morbid about it, but I think it's a useful lens to have and a perspective to have, not to think about it all the time, but just have it like in the back of your mind that, am I choosing joy? Am I choosing to, get the best out of people and whatnot? So along those lines, what are you most proud of?
I don't know. I mean, I'm very, again, it goes into living these multiple lives. I'm very proud of the quality of life and the happiness. Granted, it couldn't last forever, that Gabriele and I were able to find in a hard situation. And now, granted, Amanda's been miserable. Being pregnant's miserable. I feel terrible. Like, guys can't be pregnant. We're like the luckiest people in the world. But she's been pregnant like 17 of the months I've known her, and I've hardly known her that long. But I think we're always happy. I think she tells me very frequently that she's never seen me mad. And granted, we've known each other like 2 years and 3 months. So maybe that's not enough time to get mad. But I don't really even know where I'm going with it. But I just don't.
Like the way you live.
Yeah, it's just, I try to find happiness or like the silver linings or the saying Gabriele desperately hated, which I grew to hate. And then I grew back to the saying that it could always be worse. And granted, in our scenario, we hit the point where it couldn't be worse. But thankfully, I was able to survive, and keep going.
Is gratitude something you practice intentionally?
No, but I've just always been really grateful. I grew up in a very loving home. We didn't have a ton, but my parents, I think at a very young age, made me work really hard. Like every morning I woke up, I had a chore list. And like by me doing that, it meant I could play catch with my dad because he didn't have to mow the lawn and rake the beach and do like 38 things when he got home. So it's just like the give and take. And thinking back, I watched some cheesy Ryan Reynolds movie last night, which was actually good. I think I cried like twice. It just came out on Netflix. I don't even remember what it's called. But
must have been good.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was called like something random, like Finding Alex or something, or the Alex Project. That's what it was. But just being grateful for all those like mini moments in your life. And now I live a very fortunate life. I get to have a wonderful partner, a wonderful child. I still have my family. Losing Gabriele obviously was the hardest thing I've ever been through. Later, losing Abby this past year, like just reopened a hole because she was my closest association of Gabriele, like left on earth. But just because they passed away doesn't mean they're not there, is my take on it. And I'm grateful to be able to find that.
I love that. I think it's a good place to wrap. I want to thank you for your vulnerability just in general, as well as today. And if you promise to slow down, we should go for a run together sometime soon.
Anytime. David said time on feet. I got to slow down.
Perfect.
Slow down to run faster.
Perfect. Cool. Well, we'll see you out there. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf. Show notes have been written by Ruby Wiles and is managed by Emily Holland. It takes a village.